then I feel like when I had a menu in front of me, it was like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Alive.
Did it roll over yet, Leah? You said there was like a 20.
It's still loading.
Wait, are they going to see all of this that we're talking right now?
Maybe.
Maybe that's what they're like. Oh, I'm not nervous at all, y'all. Hey, we Gucci. We're professionals here. Professional storytellers in Jackson Hole and the FAR.
All right. Okay. It's almost a thing.
We can start throwing out shameless plugs.
Okay.
Well, it's good. It's good to see you all. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's great to be amongst this group.
I agree. Ryan, just to make sure, it's New Red, right?
Yeah. Thank you for checking.
Got it.
I don't know what Ross originally was. My theory is that 3/4 of the people who came through Ellis Island with ROS on the beginning of their name got it cut down to Ross by one of those dumb Irish cops who could only spell words with 4 letters or less. Could have been Rostenkowski, Rostopovich, who the hell knows?
It could be Polish.
It could be anything. You know, the New York area is full of Rosses and they're not all Irish.
No.
I'm posting it.
I can't say I came here in a boat. Which are always part of my stories, of course. Especially, you know what? It'd be good to tell a DACA story just because it's up in the air right now and it's actually up at the Supreme Court and we should have a decision by next month.
Wow.
So
That'd
maybe
be
I'll do that.
You have a bigger decision in November. I hope it's the right outcome.
Yeah.
Things are looking better.
I have a crazy theory, and I'm not into like politics a lot, but I don't know. It's kind of a bad theory. Maybe I shouldn't say it now that we're live streaming.
Yeah.
Good
We're live.
point.
I'll say it later.
Oh, ICE is listening in.
Yeah.
We'll all be labeled as communists on some list.
Probably already on that list.
Likely.
Okay. Let's see.
You're right below Jane Fonda. It's actually alphabetical, Jeff.
I wonder.
Oh, wow. Setup is so nice.
My roommate's got it up in the living room.
All right. It's totally working. We have
Yeah.
8 people watching now.
Yeah.
Are we, they can see us right now?
Yep. They can see us right now. Remember, there's a 30-second delay. Hi, Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everyone. Or, Cassandra, I can't unmute you. I don't know why. Denise is there. All right.
I'm unmuted. I built a special Zoom background because my computer's not new enough to do the virtual like cyber background, so I just built one.
It's really cool.
Classy.
Yeah, this is made out of like plaster of Paris, but you can't tell through the Zoom.
Oh, it looks like
Okay.
Venetian marble.
Correct, basically.
Mhm.
We're, Jeff, so it's live. You can show the audience.
Hi, everyone. If you're watching, welcome to our first ever online Cabin Fever Story Slam. Sit tight. We'll be getting going at 7 p.m. sharp. So we've got about 6 minutes or so. All of our storytellers are here with us tonight. We'll introduce them in a little bit, but we're super excited to have everybody here tonight. You might hear us just chatting before we get going, similar to any of our story slams. So hang out, get a drink, get comfortable, get a snack, whatever it is you need to do, put on some pants or take them off. And we will start.
Okay.
And we'll get going in about 5 minutes or so. So thanks for joining us tonight.
I'm totally wearing pants under it.
I'm wearing pants too.
because you never know. This is on YouTube.
Oh, that feels better.
I've been teaching on Zoom, and the first day that I taught, I put on a blazer with sweatpants, and the students totally called me out on it.
Oh.
But I think they were supportive overall.
Anyone else doing, I don't know if you're checking in online or anything, but like themed days in the office? Costumed or anything like that?
I like that. No.
Just you, Ryan.
Evidently, we just did that with our first Latina Day, which was so much fun because, you know, May 4th yesterday.
All of us don't have to go to the office anymore. It's everything you hope it'll be.
Okay, I'm getting good feedback. People are they're able to watch it.
Ah, good.
All right.
Working.
Yeah, how many people are tuned in right now?
34.
Oh my
Nice.
gosh,
What's
Not
up?
including us.
that's kind of a lot.
36.
34. That's awesome. Welcome everybody again. They can make comments on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
Uh-oh.
once his amazing shirt, Mac.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you guys are famous.
Well, if you guys are just
It
tuning
is interactive. I didn't even know. So that's kind of cool.
Let me close my bedroom drawers then.
Oh, I can't do any school district promotion either.
So
Y'all,
if you're just tuning in, you're getting a little early behind the scenes. Welcome to our first ever Cabin Fever Story Slam online. We will be getting going in about 5 minutes or less. 3 minutes. We'll start nice and sharp tonight, unlike normally. But stoked to have everybody here. Good time to grab a drink, grab a snack, get comfy. We have 9 stories total tonight, and we'll introduce everybody in a minute. But oddly enough, we all seem to be a little bit more nervous doing this digitally than we are when we have to get up in front of 300 or 400 people. So
No way.
you think, Jenna, it's more nerve-wracking in front of live audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys not?
I agree.
Yeah,
I
I'm nervous every single time. I've done this like 10 times so far. But I'm
every
not
time.
nervous right now. It feels good.
Oh,
I
that's good.
feed off the energy of the people, so that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I
the
agree.
difference.
I
I
agree.
mean, now that I don't receive any good energy from you right now, but it's just a little different.
It's nice to have a few, bouts of raucous laughter in the first 10 minutes of your gig in order to energize you for the rest. And,
Yep.
what we've got here is dead silence. So you don't know if you're laying an egg or not.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't even matter.
Just imagine those sighs and those ohs and
The emotional responses.
hmm.
We should probably go to gallery view. There we go. Now everybody's there.
Okay, and I'm going to mute all of you and spotlight whoever's talking and then unmute you after the stories, and then everybody can cheer and clap in
Okay.
between, and then I'll mute you guys again. That kind of drill.
Very good.
Cool. All right, we about there? We'll give everybody another couple minutes. How many people do we have now, Leah?
47.
Oh, it's
Oh my
going
God.
up and up.
I'm not going on unless we get 100.
Oh, we'll get 100. We'll get 100.
Yeah,
48.
we get 300 or 400 to
What are
show
we
up
gonna
to the
do
venue.
without the?
We got 100 online. No one else got nothing. Taco Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo.
I know,
There you
right?
go.
Shoot.
49. 49.
Just say 100.
There's 100. There's 100.
There
We
you
just
go.
did it.
If you don't know.
Right. Fake news.
Might even be 1,000.
Hey, no props then.
All right.
I'm going to mute everyone, but Jeff.
Oh, Leah, real quick, I have a question. Are we going to be, does the viewer, are we in gallery view, or is it really just
Right
whoever?
now,
is-
you're all in gallery view. I will
Okay.
spotlight each of you when
Okay, cool.
you're speaking. And then go back to gallery view in between the stories so everybody will see you cheer and clap.
Okay, not, yeah, just wondering. Just
Right. So right now you're
I don't
gallery
want to be on my
view,
phone.
and I'm going to go to Jeff.
Great.
And then it'll be Ryan first, then Jenna, Dan, Jose, Cassandra, Mac, Jim, and then Anne Marie.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
You guys feel? Should we start?
Yep.
All right. Well, everyone, welcome, welcome. Hopefully we have some new people tuning in tonight. My name's Jeff Moran, and I want to welcome you to our 32nd Cabin Fever Story Slam, our first ever done online for obvious reasons, but we got quite a few requests to do something like this. So we're really happy to make it happen. And I'll tell you a little bit about how this whole event's going to go. It's a little bit different than our normal events when they're live, and we'll get to that in a second. So first and foremost, the Cabin Fever Story Slam is presented by Teton County Library, and it is produced by Leah Schlachter. So thank you, Leah, for all your hard work. She's also directing the show tonight. Everybody watching on YouTube is going to see what Leah is creating on Zoom, and then somehow sending it through the wires and the internets over to YouTube. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. You can make comments on YouTube, give it the thumbs up, do all that stuff that you would normally do. So couple things to keep in mind. You may have gotten to this live feed from Teton County Library's social media, from their Facebook page. So remember to check out the library on Facebook. They're also on Instagram. Those are their two live social channels right now. And then also you can find out information about the library and what they're doing right now during quarantine at tclib.org. So again, my name is Jeff Moran. Welcome. This is super exciting. It's been a fun process getting all the storytellers and everything together to figure out how we would do an online story slam. And I think we've got a good show in store for you guys tonight. I know we have people tuning in, obviously, from around Teton County and Jackson area, but definitely from around the country that I know of, and possibly even the world. So if this is your first time checking out the Cabin Fever Story Slam, thank you for being here. Let's see, couple things to remind you guys about. Well, first off, before we get into the show, I do want to say a personal thanks to everybody out there who is doing their part to help keep one another safe right now. We've got some pretty crazy times that we're all living through. So thank you all, especially for those of you who are wearing masks and washing hands and gloves and all that. Like, let's keep each other safe and get through this. All right, so as far as tonight's event goes, like I said, it's a bit different than when we do this live for many reasons. So tonight, one of the big things is we're not judging. Normally, the Story Slam is a competition. We'll award first, second, and third. Tonight, it's just for fun. Everybody ties for first, so that's awesome. We do ask that all of our storytellers still stick to the 5-minute time limit. But we're not going to ring a maraca. These are all professionals and people who are very, very familiar with the Cabin Fever Story Slam. So we're going to trust that they're going to do us right. Let's see. Tonight's storytellers, normally we pick them randomly. Tonight they are curated. They're handpicked with gloves, of course. In this order, we're going to be hearing from Ryan Muir, Den Binderup, Jenna Mahaffey, Jose Rivas, Cassandra Lee, Mack Dukehart, Jim Ross, and Anne Marie Wells. So if you're a fan of the Story Slam series, you probably recognize most of, if not all of those names. So a huge thanks to all of our storytellers for volunteering and being a part of tonight's event. We were going through some of the stats of previous Story Slams, and between these 8 storytellers, there's something like 23 mostly first, but second or third place finishes over the course of the last 6 years in our 31 previous Story Slams. So some serious storytelling talent with us tonight. Couple things for our viewers out there. This is a Story Slam. We try not to censor anyone. So you may hear some adult content, you may hear some profanity. It's your call who you want to have watching. I doubt it's going to get too raunchy or gnarly, but you never know. So just be aware. We are not doing, if you've come to the live shows, we have a Mad Lib component where people fill in anonymous little slips. We're not doing that tonight either. So it's just strictly storytelling, no intermission. So you can, take a pee, get a drink, do whatever you need whenever you want. You don't have to raise your hand, just leave. And then as far as cell phones go, you don't have to turn it off. You can leave it on. That's totally fine with us because we can't hear it. And then let's see, lastly, heckling. Normally we really frown on hecklers, but tonight, say whatever you want. Scream and yell at the storytellers. Tell them you love them, tell them you hate them, whatever you want, let it fly. Because most likely, unless you live next door, we won't hear you. All right. Let's see. I do want to say a huge shout out to our former venue host, the Pink Garter Theater. As many of you know, unfortunately, has just announced that they are no longer going to be operating as a theater. So we've been at the Pink Garter Theater and in the Rose Bar for the last almost the whole time the Story Slam's been going on, almost 6 years. So huge thanks to Dom Gagliardi and everybody at the Pink Garter Theater for hosting us. When we are finally able to all get back together and do this live and in person, it's going to be somewhere else and way different. So can't thank you enough, Dom and crew, for all you've done for the Cabin Fever series over the years. Let's see, I have a special thing I want to show everybody. So this isn't my chair, it's just a chair in the house that I'm staying at right now, but I thought this was cool because it's pretty appropriate. So I've got my special Cabin Fever chair for this evening. All right, well, time to grab a drink, do what you need to do. Again, you won't be interrupting anyone. This is a one-way communication. Leah Schlachter is going to be pulling the puppet strings and making sure that you guys all see whoever the main speaker is at the time. I'm going to kick it off with my own story that has to do with tonight's theme of sharing. And then we will follow that up with our 8. This isn't actually an all-star story slam, but these are our all-star storytellers. So let's get right into it. I'm going to move my computer so that I can stand up, because otherwise it doesn't feel like the same. So bear with me for a second here. All right, let's see. Can you see me? Okay. What was I gonna say? I gotta remember my first line. All right, I got it. Here we go, bear with me. First online story slam. I need a drink of water. It is weird. We've all been discussing how it's gonna be kind of weird that there's no audience interaction. So we're just gonna assume you guys are all at home yelling and screaming and cheering for our awesome stories. All right, so many people who know me know that I am like way into heavy metal music. Some may even call me a metalhead. What a lot of people don't know is that I have an equally intense affinity for Billy Joel. Like everything he's done, every song except for We Didn't Start the Fire. None of that. So the way that I got into Billy Joel, my obsession started when I was a little kid. Every year at Christmas time, my family would go to our friend's Christmas party. The Frascas would throw this awesome annual Christmas party. And it seemed like, for whatever reason, the party always ended with like this eggnog fueled sing along to Billy Joel's Piano Man. And it was just this awesome energy in the room. They were like young and old, everybody arms around each other, swaying and belting out the lyrics, singing along to Piano Man. And I loved it. I loved the energy and I wanted to be a part of that so bad. So I swore that I was going to learn all the words to Piano Man. So fortunately, I have an awesome mother who is equal parts amazing and just as radical as she is late. And so she would gift me an extra 15 to 30 minutes on a weekly basis after my regular drum lessons at the local music store. So I would take that time to just scour through the Billy Joel songbooks and like read the Piano Man lyrics over and over and over and over and trying to commit them to memory. Well, soon enough, I finally learned all the lyrics to Piano Man, and even eventually I got old enough to have my own eggnog at the Christmas parties. And so my dreams had been realized. And then I puked. Well, fast forward to 2015, and my absolutely amazing partner, Amy, got me, for my birthday, she got me tickets for her and I to go see Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden on his home turf. And I was just like ecstatic. And so Amy is definitely a full-on huge metalhead. And Amy is definitely not a huge Billy Joel fan. So I was really excited to not only go see Billy Joel for the first time, but to share that experience with her and you know, hope that maybe she ended up getting just as into Billy Joel as I am. So my birthday is in January, and the concert was in September. So we had 9 months to prepare for our trip to New York at Madison Square Garden and to go see Billy Joel. So we were listening to a lot of Billy Joel songs, learning the lyrics, like really getting ready. And then one night we're in the kitchen cooking dinner, a Billy Joel song comes on, and I just start like doing like some weird dance move, and she was like, "What the hell is that?" I said, "Oh, well, this is the move, the dance that goes with this song." She's like, "What do you mean with that song?" I said, "Oh, I thought I told you. Every one of Billy Joel's popular songs has like a particular like 2 or 3 move dance that goes with the song, and we have to learn all of them by September, or else we're gonna stand out like sore thumbs at Madison Square Garden. We'll be the only ones not dancing." And rightfully so, she was pretty reluctant to believe this story. But I stuck to the script and I persevered, and I finally got her to believe that we had to learn all of these like unique dance moves to all of these different Billy Joel songs. And so she got into it. Like we a song would come on, which they were coming on a lot because we were getting stoked to go see Billy Joel. And she'd be like, "What's this dance move?" And I'd be like, "Oh, this one is like," you know, and I just make up something on the spot. And it got to the point where like a Billy Joel song would come on, and Amy would do the dance that goes to that song. So I realized, I'm like, oh God, I got to start keeping track of which moves go with which songs. And I somehow managed to make it consistent enough where she went along with it and was like learning the dances. So I was getting so excited to see Billy Joel, like lifetime dream, couldn't believe it. But like what really was driving me was the idea that we were going to get to Madison Square Garden, and the look on Amy's face when she realized she had spent 9 months learning all of these different dance moves that meant absolutely nothing. Like it was literally going to be the night of my life. And then I got a new job. So in June of 2015, 3 months prior to the Billy Joel concert, I accepted a position at the Jacksonville Ski and Snowboard Club doing events and marketing, putting on like our big annual fundraisers. And so my first task was I had to plan and produce our big annual gala fundraiser, the Ski Ball. And it just happened to be on the exact same night as the Billy Joel concert in New York City. So I toiled with what to do. I tried to come up with a way like maybe I could like go to New York and you know, someone could run the event that I had spent 3 or 4 months planning. But ultimately realized like there was no way that was going to happen. So we ended up having to sell the tickets. And so at that point it was like, well, there's no reason to keep this practical joke going. So I let Amy know that there's no dance moves. That was all a lie. And she was like totally stunned. And I'd like to think completely impressed, but you know, she's used to putting up with my bullshit. But she was like, "You seriously spent 6 months, all that time and energy into making me believe that there were these dance moves?" And I was like, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Well, ultimately, we ended up laughing our asses off about what it would have been like if we'd gotten to MSG, and the moment where she realized she had spent all this time learning all the dance moves that didn't actually exist. And I asked her later, I was like, "Well, how come you never just Googled it or anything?" And she said, "Well, because I believe what my partner tells me." Whoops, sorry. So it ended up all working out pretty well. And coincidentally, the people that we sold the tickets to were like longtime family friends of mine from New Hampshire. And they had been at all of those Frasca Christmas parties and all of the Piano Man sing-alongs. So they were nice enough to share videos from the concert. So we got a little taste of the live Billy Joel show, but we still need to see him. All right, thanks everybody. I hope you enjoyed my story. It is definitely a trip not having a crowd here to either clap or boo, but that was fun.
Absolutely. Very good.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
And we didn't start the
We didn't start the fire. Did I get? No, I'm not muted. I'm still there, right? Okay, cool. Well, again, everybody, thanks. Hopefully we've got some people tuning in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you just got here, we are about to start our first, prior to our first hand-selected storyteller of the evening. Again, our theme tonight is sharing. And so we're gonna kick it off with Ryan Muir. But before we do, let me tell you a little bit about Ryan. So Ryan appeared in our 2019 All-Star Story Slam. In our 6 years, we've only had 2 All-Star events where we handpick people instead of having it be crowd selected. So Ryan was in our 2019, the second All-Star event. He placed second at the Story Slam with the theme Obstacles. And then let's see, when asked, what is something you've discovered or rediscovered that you've been enjoying while sheltering in place? Ryan responded, learning choreography to some of my favorite disco hits, thanks to the help of 2 young Korean women on YouTube, Oh and Stephen King. And he also said, when asked if you could meet and hang out with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why? His response, Lady Gaga, because she is the modern diva. All right, everybody, please welcome Ryan Muir.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Leah and Jeff, for putting this on and creating this opportunity. Yeah, it took me a while to get what I was gonna say, and then it came to me actually last night very clearly. A number of years ago, I had spent a Christmas with my grandmother and my mother in a hospital in Arizona. And at that time, we had known this was going to be the last Christmas together because my mom had terminal lung cancer. And so we're in this subterranean hospital and it's cold and, we're trying to make the most of it on Christmas Day. I remember the furnishing was like from the 80s and it was very bright and Jurassic Park was on. And again, we're making the most of it. And I wrote both of them a card and it seemed the most fitting for this kind of understanding of what this Christmas would be. And in the card to my mom, I was trying to be strong and noble. And I remember this phrase of, it's not over until the fat lady sings and, being someone's champion, just trying to express to her as much as I could, I was going to be there for her no matter what throughout this time. And the other card, I gave to my grandma and it was pretty much the same, but there was this understanding of, what was going to happen when the dust settled. And that we were going to be sharing this experience of, her losing her daughter and myself losing my mother. And in the card saying, we'll never be alone in that. We'll have this experience. But, I promised her that she would never feel alone. And so to exemplify that, I had these 2 gold bracelets. And I had one and I gave her a matching one. And I told her, this is kind of an oath in a sense of, always looking out for you and always this understanding that we had this shared experience that would leave this wound forever and shape our lives. Unfortunately, as it goes, my mom passed and people grieve very differently. And I grieved one way and she did. And at times they didn't match and we didn't connect all the time. And, I look back on it and I'm understanding that we did the best that we could. And so sometimes it would be talking all the time and sometimes it wasn't. And, nonetheless, a number of months ago, I flew out to Minneapolis, St. Paul, where my grandma grew up and now is, and she needed to move to a nursing facility. And so I get there and, part of the reason to be there was just to physically be there with her and keep up that understanding of not feeling alone. My cousins were taking care of her because they're based in the Twin Cities, but nonetheless, I wanted to go and just see her and again, just sit with her in this time of transition. So the first day I'm there, it's a weekend, and I leave, where she is, and I go back to her apartment because all of her belongings she can't bring with her to this nursing facility. And I come in and I'm immediately confronted with, who she was and who she used to be. There's a Tanqueray bottle immediately when you walk in, tons of gin and tonics in the lake, just always in hand. There's a 10-point buck that her father shot. There are tons of UFO videos because she saw these flying saucers in northern Minnesota in the 90s, and she became a believer. And then there's all this Japanese art that she collected through the 70s and 60s. And I sit down and I realize, you need to find the things that are important to your grandma, for both of us. And I immediately find this box that's just so clear. This is her life in a box. There's pictures of her mother, my mother, those macaroni cards you make when you're 6 or 5 that I had sent to her, pictures of her multiple husbands, insurance and so on. And I get to this card near the bottom of the box, and it's the card I had sent to my mother that Christmas. And I had never known where it had gone. And then below that one is the card I sent her. And I'm, of course, instantly I'm back in that hospital room and I remember the bracelet. And it's nowhere to be seen. So I leave with that box of important things. I want to make sure it's not lost in this transition. And I have a flight back to Jackson soon, and I go back to the nursing facility just to say goodbye and sit with her again. And I come into the room and I can tell she's not sleeping. She's resting, and I could tell looking back on it, she was sitting alone in that shared experience that we had. And I knew, the grief for her was much different from me. She had lost her daughter. And I recognized that she was sitting alone and felt alone in that shared experience. And I woke her up and I just, said, Grandma, I need to be going soon. And we sat together, and what was so evident is that she had none of her belongings with her at that time. And at that point, I gave her a hug and I go to say goodbye. And then I look down, and on her left wrist is the bracelet that I had given her those Christmases before. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice,
Thank
Ryan.
you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for sharing. Definitely deeply. And I actually heard a story recently about just about how everybody grieves in their own way and how it's okay however you do it. But that really reminded me of it because the story, I think it was maybe a story slam. I'm pretty sure it was. But anyways, that brought up a lot of emotion, and thank you for sharing such a deep and personal story. Really appreciate it. All right, again, thanks, Ryan. Woo! All right, well, it sounds like last I heard, we were up to 100 viewers on YouTube, so that's pretty amazing, especially for our first ever online Cabin Fever Slam. So we're gonna keep moving right along. If you're just tuning in, welcome. We're excited to have you. Tonight's theme is sharing. We are moving into our second storyteller of the evening. Next up, we have Jenna Mahaffey, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about her. So Jenna appeared in our 2019 All-Star Story Slam as well, only the second All-Star Slam we've ever had. She has won 2 Story Slams, Messy and Control were those themes, and then she also got 3rd in the one that was themed New. So she's a pretty popular storyteller at the Cabin Fever. When Jenna was asked, what is something you've discovered or rediscovered that you've been enjoying while sheltering in place? She said, The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills season 10. And what made you laugh recently? I think we might all be able to connect with this. She said, photos of people protesting coronavirus restrictions. And then in quotes, we demand haircuts. Yeah, hard to process that one. All right, Jenna. Thank you and welcome. Everybody welcome Jenna Mahaffey.
Hi, everyone. Am I Good to go now? I think I am. Okay. All right. It's funny. I'm like more nervous than I thought I was going to be for this. Okay. Anyways. So my senior year of college was the first and only year I lived off campus because our school was pretty small. So we were restricted to living in the dorms. And while I didn't live like without, or rather out of walking distance, I didn't really live within it either. And it was kind of much easier to ride a bike to class. It was kind of like that distance. So that summer before senior year, my dad had outfitted my old GT steel road bike, which was like kind of this like 1990s relic with updated wheels as a birthday present. And of course I had also kind of mandated that I got new handlebar tape on it, which I chose to be bright pink. And it was this pearly teal bike. And with the handlebar tape to make it stand out, it was definitely my bike, you know, and like people knew it was my bike when they saw it. It's kind of the same with like cars and bumper stickers, right? So I was on campus a little bit earlier my senior year because I was an orientation leader. And out of the 2,000 people that attended our school, I went to this really small liberal arts school. There were maybe around 150 of us that arrived about 10 days prior to the rest of the student body. So you basically pretty much already knew exactly who was around and who wasn't around, right? And long story short, we partied like a lot during those 10 days. You know, there's this really small group of people. And one of the nights happened to be this off-campus bar night. And I had just turned 21 for this kid, David Giesel's 21st birthday. And so this was an event that we like, everyone was excited for, everyone was invited. And I was really psyched because living off campus, I was actually closer to the bars. So I could host, you know, like our first official house pregame, and I didn't have to worry about transportation from campus. And this sounds so silly to say, but I really felt like an adult during that time. So in typical 21-year-old fashion, I arrive incredibly late and very drunk on like 19 Limeritas. And I decide that it's a good idea to, really quick. I forgot my bike lock, right? So I have this like brand new bike, right? And I'm drunk and I'm at this bar night and this is like my time, right? Cause this is like my neighborhood, my area now. But of course I forget the bike lock. So I think at the time that it's a good idea to let the bar bouncer watch my bike. I'm like, can you watch this for me? And, you know, this guy is already busy turning a blind eye to like a long line of fake IDs. And I find he's like, sure, whatever. And I'm kind of like, okay. So I find myself going in and out of the bar during this time to check if my bike is still there, which was like every 10 minutes or so. And I'm seemingly getting more drunk, but I'm also getting more concerned, which is kind of weird. And, you know, naturally, as fate has it, on my 5th or maybe like my 25th check, quote unquote, the bike is missing. And so I turn to the bouncer and I start yelling at him like he like lost my dog, you know, I'm like, where did this go? Like, what happened? And he just starts to shrug and he's like, you know, I'm like, the only logical thing I can think of at the time is to burst into tears and run toward the many cop cars that are lined across the street because they know this birthday party is going on and we're the only people on campus and we're obviously all kind of underage, at the age, et cetera, et cetera. And I tell this guy sort of what happened. And of course, you know, he just turns on his lights. Like I just told him I found a bomb in a trash can, which is typical Central Maine. And all of a sudden lights start flashing and there's a 3-car police search for my stolen bike. So, you know, I kind of knew this was a massive overreaction at the time, but I guess I didn't really think to like stop it per se. I just kind of wanted to find my bike and I like wanted the police help. So my friend comes out and she's sober and she tells me like, get in the car, like we're gonna find your bike. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And I've got tears streaming down my face. And like, this is like the most cringy I probably have ever looked in my whole life. There's like mascara and it's bad. And you know, I'm riding kind of that fine edge of like extremely drunk and blackout when I finally get this call from a random 207 number, which is the main area code. And of course it's the Waterville police station. And they go in this thick Central Maine accent, which I wish so badly I could repeat, but I can. And they're, you know, ma'am, we think we found your bike, like bright pink handlebar tape, green color. And I'm like, yes, like, oh my God, I'm so relieved. I start crying even more. And then he kind of pauses and he's like, we want you to know we've actually arrested the man who was on your bike for second-degree theft. And it's like ... and pause, and he's like, and we believe he's actually a student at the school you attend. And I'm like, oh shit, right? Because like, that feeling when your stomach drops and you just have a massive pit, like that's exactly what happened. All of a sudden I was completely sober, supposedly. And I went to this, like I said, this small school, and to make matters worse, there were less of us that were, already on campus. And so in my head, I was kind of like, shit, like I know exactly who this is, right? So I walk into the police station, and there's David Giesel. Sure enough, his 21st birthday, sitting behind a cell. It is the only time I have ever been a guest at a birthday party and ended up putting someone in jail. I hope that won't ever happen again, but here we were. So the next morning I wake up, I puke, and I retrieve my bike from the police station. And I walk into the dining hall, and someone's just like, that chick put that guy in jail last night. And I'm kind of like, oh, yikes, that's not great. But I'm also kind of laughing, cringeworthy and funny at the same time. And David, bless his heart, spends the entirety of the rest of the semester apologizing to me because he truly thinks that I'm going to press charges against him, which I never said I would. But he's, bringing me flowers, cookies, beers, and just continually asking me to not press charges, because even though I never said I would. And my bike, which was, still highly recognizable from the pink accents, and even more so from the story and the fallout of this whole event, was kind of forever known after that time as Jenna and David's bike. So that's the only time I've ever shared a bike with someone.
Nice. Thanks, Jenna. Just in the overall theme of tonight, of sharing, I just got to say that Jenna, by far, I think in your career as a cabin fever storyteller, definitely have no fear in sharing with the audience. So thank you for that. Also, I just want to say this, like this reminded me of in Jackson, and some of you, if you have lived here for a little while, may have seen this. I remember a few years ago, I saw a flyer hanging by the Pink Garter, and it was just a picture of a bike, and it had some words, and it said, "I'm an asshole. I stole your bike. I was drunk. I'm sorry." And it's something like, "It's back at the brew pub. You can go get it." So I'm glad you got your pink handlebar GT bike back. I had a GT as one of my first bikes too, so it holds a special place in my heart. All right, everyone. Again, thank you, Jenna, for your story about sharing and not pressing charges on David. Okay, next up we have Den Binderup. I'll tell you a little bit about Den. So Den's actually a relatively new face on the Cabin Fever Story Slam series, and she has come out of the gates blazing hot. Just in the last season, since November, we had 5 Story Slams, and she won 3 of them. New, Scars, and Fame were the themes of the slams that she won. So definitely making a big impact on our Cabin Fever family. When asked what made you laugh recently, Den answered, "I just laughed with the mom who is a nurse who came home to a big chalk message written on the sidewalk in front of her house, where her young daughter, had mixed up the vowels in the word hero. The message for all the neighborhood to read said, 'A whore lives here.'" All right, give it up for Den Binderup.
Am I unmuted? Sharing was not a concept I really grew up with, but fear was. Took a while until I was an adult before I got those two straightened out. I was a young mother living for the summer in London. Every day was magical. There were adventures every day, except coming home at night. After you got off the subway to get to our flat, you had to go through this underpass. It was narrow, it was damp, it smelled like fermenting piss. And in the middle of it, there was this rug or blanket, this kind of sometimes moving lump. And every once in a while, you'd see these frantic eyes that didn't focus. And it was very narrow to get past this. And I would take my two little girls and we'd kind of scoot by, but I would always think of those horror movies where as you're going right past under the bed or something, you know, an arm reaches out and grabs your leg. So it was always terrifying for me. I just worried about keeping everybody safe. Well, the months finished and it was time to go home. And we had a pantry full of food and all sorts of things that would no longer fit in the carry-on suitcases. And I couldn't waste it. So I packed all these bags full of food and warm socks and sweaters. And I remember putting the bright orange carrots on top, and I carried all these bags down to the underpass. And I pulled on the rug carpet blanket thing, and I just tugged until this face just leapt up at me. And I said, we are leaving now. And I was just wondering if you could use any of these things. And before my eyes, his face like dropped 10, 20 years, and he just glowed. He made eye contact. He looked like some kind of angelic being. And he just started saying over and over to me, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I felt so ashamed of myself for letting all those days and weeks go by being afraid of him instead of friendly, and keeping to myself instead of sharing what I had, even if it was only going to be a smile. And I just like to think that I'm hopefully a better person because of him. That's it.
Yeah, Dan.
Very good.
I like that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well done. That's awesome. I feel like there's a pretty similar message in that story to what we're all going on, what's going on with us, everyone right now. I feel like when we all come out from this crazy coronavirus times, like we're all gonna have hopefully a new perspective on everything. And I know for me already, it's just the simple idea of having to be conscious of when you pass someone and you're both wearing masks, they can't see you smile, right? Like you have to be conscious of what it's like to interact with everyone else in your community. You have to wave or do the wave or whatever you want to do. So thanks, Den, for reminding us that we're all human and to be kind to one another most of the time. Like, look, Jenna just proved it. She didn't even charge that guy for stealing her bike. Okay, we are moving on. Let's see, I've got all my notes here like normal. So Den was our third storyteller. We are moving on to our fourth storyteller of the evening. We have a total of 8 tonight. Again, if you are just chiming in, let's see, I just saw a chat. I wonder how many. No, I thought I might have a number, but I know we've got some people out there in YouTube land. So thank you all for joining us for our first ever online Cabin Fever Story Slam. All right, next up, we have Mr. Jose Rivas. A little bit about Jose. He was part of our 2019 All-Star Story Slam, only the second one we've ever done in 6 years. He won the Slam with the theme obstacles and got second in our All-Star Slam back in 2019 that was the theme of surprise. So let's see a little bit about Jose. When asked, what is something you've discovered or rediscovered that you've been enjoying while sheltering in place? Jose said, running and cooking. I didn't realize how beneficial and rewarding going out for a run is. Believe it or not, I've run about 100 miles while in quarantine, and well, food is life, and I love experimenting and cooking new things. Otherwise, he said if he could meet someone dead or alive and why and get to hang out with them, he would want to meet President Obama to discuss with him how awesome DACA has been for Jose and the other 800,000 recipients. And he'd also want to bring back his grandmother so that they could have a good conversation and she could be he could get to know her a little bit better. All right, everyone, please help us welcome Jose Rivas.
Am I unmuted? Perfect. First of all, two things. Ryan, I totally feel you. My mom is battling cancer, non-curable, multiple myeloma, so I feel you. Second, happy Cinco de Mayo. You'll know that Mexicans don't celebrate it as much as Americans do, but just a fact, it's not Mexico Independence Day. And with that, you talked a little bit about DACA, and I think I'll share the story. Leah gave me this idea. Winging it is always the best part, right? I'm good at that. So to tell a story of when I shared a story, and I would want to go back to college. In 2007, I graduated from high school, being undocumented. It's no secret that I'm undocumented. It's all over the news. I talked about stories. All my stories have been about my status. So in 2007, I graduated with my degree in high school, my college diploma. And in 2010, I obtained a degree, associate's degree. In 2013, I earned a second associate's degree with hopes that I'll be able to study in college at some point. And of course, that didn't happen too easily. By the time 2013 hit, I graduated with another associate, and in 2013, I was also accepted to UW. At this point, I had no idea of what a 4-year institution would be like. And luckily enough, I joined a group that was similar to me, a student group, and I was part of a Latino studies program where I learned how to use my story and how to use my status in an academic forum. And in 2014, the University of Wyoming hosted an immigration symposium where they asked a student to come forward and tell a story of what it was growing up in Wyoming as an immigrant. Of course, everybody drafted up a paragraph. My story was chosen, except they thought they were getting a story where I would tell how beautiful it is growing up in Wyoming, which it is, but they didn't know that I was going to tell my story of how difficult it was growing up in Wyoming and going through a college system that was not fitted for you, not obtaining federal funding or the FAFSA, or the local scholarship. So in 2014, I was chosen to be part of this immigration symposium and be a panelist to tell my story alongside Senator Alan Simpson, who co-wrote IRCA, the Immigration Reform Act, otherwise known as the amnesty. So he was there. That was a big deal. And we also had Bertine Bahij, who was a child soldier who now resides in Gillette. But everybody was going to tell their story. I had my opportunity last minute. I didn't want to do it. There was hundreds of people there. There was a lot of cameras. This would be the first time that I would out myself as an undocumented student in Wyoming. And Jose Antonio Vargas was there, who was the first individual to publicly out himself, both as a gay individual and as an undocumented writer working, I believe, for the Washington Post or New York. I don't recall exactly, but he looked at me and he said, Jose, you're going to share your story, not only for yourself, but everybody else who is similar to you here in the state of Wyoming. You're opening up, you're being a trailblazer, and now is the time to do it. Of course, I started telling my story of how it was growing up in Wyoming, coming from Mexico, moving here in 1999 because of the pipeline industry. And I get to the point where I'm talking about a family member who is deported, and I just choke and I don't know how to proceed. I look up at the audience and I see some of my favorite professors teary-eyed and telling me, like giving me the look like, Jose, you can do this. And I was sharing for the first time about how deportation affects families and separation, and how I had to work twice as hard to obtain my college degree. And all I heard was the camera, and I knew that this was going to go public. I was putting my family at risk. ICE was pretty big at that point. It was coming up. And I knew that I would speak out for a lot of DACA recipients who were attending the University of Wyoming at that time. And in 2015, like most of you know from my stories, I graduated as a finalist for the Tobin Award of top graduating senior, top 6. So that was amazing. It gave us a platform to be able to say, you know, we're here in Wyoming, we're undocumented, DACA recipients, kind of undocumented. DACA gives us a protection, and the University of Wyoming and future undocumented students will never have the same conversation, and new dialogue and honest conversations were created in 2014 when I outed myself as an undocumented student. And in 2018, I earned my master's, and that brought me here to Jackson. So thank you for inviting me. That's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, way to go.
Hey,
Way to go.
Pepito, as it says on your screen.
Yeah.
Like every time you tell a story, it's so inspirational, and just the way that you've put yourself out there and what you've shared, and like it's just so inspiring. So thank you for all you're doing. And I'm sure there are people all around Wyoming, all around the country, maybe even the world right now, who are inspired by your courage. And so thanks for being an awesome storyteller and for sharing these like incredible stories. Like I don't have anything like that. Like I've never been put in that position to have to make a decision like that. So
it's so relevant because it's up in the Supreme Court right now, and they're going to have a decision within the next month or so. They're supposed to decide by June, and it's up in the air. Mine expires in September. I work for the school district. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm sending my renewal in this week, and hopefully, you know, something is decided in our favor.
So we all do. So thanks for sharing about sharing. All right, so we're halfway through. So far we've heard from Ryan Newray, Den Binderup, Jenna Mahaffey, and Jose Rivas. I want to again say a huge thanks to Leah Schlachter from Teton County Library. She is pulling the puppet strings and directing this whole thing and producing this online Cabin Fever show for us. So thanks, Leah, for all that you do. And again, thanks to everyone who's tuning in. I think we hit 106 viewers or something. So pretty awesome for our first online slam. All right, next up, another one of our all-stars. We've got Miss Cassandra Lee is back with us. She appeared in our first All-Star Slam in 2017. She has won, the Karma and she won Karma and got second place in the Outsider slams, and that was the All-Star one. So some really awesome stories coming out of Cassandra. When asked, what is something you've discovered or rediscovered that you've been enjoying while sheltering in place? This is good. I took note of this. Not really, but it's just interesting. I've discovered that Tinder made their passport feature available to all. So you can cyber visit any city in the world and see who you might match with. So far, she's been to Portland, Paris, and Montreal. Nice. All right, everyone, please help me welcome Cassandra Lee.
Okay, so actually this story occurs at a time when I was taking a break from Tinder, Bumble, Facebook, Instagram, and Craigslist. So naturally I signed up for petfinder.com, and immediately I just started reading biographies and swiping along to find my forever pet. And after a few days of really searching, I found this tiny little tabby cat named Alfalfa, and Alfalfa was located in Anaconda, Montana. If you've ever driven through Montana, you might recognize the name because the sign on the highway says Anaconda Opportunity. Those are the two towns that the exit leads to, so I knew that this was my Anaconda Opportunity. So I called up the shelter there, and the woman that answered goes like, what do you want? And I was like, well, I saw Alfalfa, the tabby cat, and I think he's my guy. I want to come pick him up. And she was like, I don't really know about cats. I kind of like the dogs. And she just hung up. And I was like, okay. But a few minutes later, a woman called back and she was like, sorry, we're kind of a colorful shelter. A lot of our volunteers and employees are also the clientele down the road at the state mental hospital. And it is an amazing shelter. I really love it there. So I hopped in the car, headed to Anaconda. When I pulled up, there was a woman sitting outside smoking a cigarette. And she just slowly looked up at me as I got out of my car and she was like, we've been waiting for you. So I walked in, and on Alfalfa's cage, there was this huge sign that said like, Cassandra is coming for him. And I was like, yes, I am, I'm here. So I brought him home and he was tiny. He was 4 pounds and he was already like a year old. And he had a lot of like sniffles and a lot of sneezes, and he would always have debris coming out of his ears. And he also really enjoyed talking to furniture. So he would sort of walk up to everything in my apartment and have a discussion with it. So we shared 5 blissful months together, and we suffered a few cases of ringworm together. Turns out it's not a worm. And then I started to notice something was a little off with him. So his belly was getting a little bit like distended, and I got worried. He kind of started to look like a volleyball with hair and a little cat head. So I brought him to the vet and she did a bunch of tests, blood tests, x-rays, all the things. And she came out with that look on her face where, you know, it's not going to be good. And she walks up and she's like, he has a deadly disease called FIP. It's caused by the feline coronavirus, and he'll die in the next couple of weeks. Here's some steroids, bring him home, you know, hope he can be comfortable. So I bring him home, I'm grieving, I'm devastated. I remember sitting under a tree in my yard and the sun was like shining on Alfalfa, but he was sort of laying on his side and his belly was just so big. And I was just crying, and you know, that's kind of on brand for me to be crying under a tree with my cat, but I was very sad. So I did what anyone would do, and I got on the internet. And I'm a graduate student, so I have access to all the like scholarly journal articles that you can find. So I started getting on the veterinary websites, or the veterinary university sites, and reading all the journal articles that I could find about this disease. And at the very bottom of one, there was an asterisk, and it was like in tiny font, almost like a whisper. And it was like, by the way, there's a cure for this. It's not legal in the US because a company owns the patents, but there's a drug in China that's working. And I was like, okay. So I got on Facebook, and there were 2 groups, kind of like what I now understand to be the cool group and the uncool group. The uncool group is led by Newt Gingrich's wife, and you can't say the word drugs or like anything illegal on there. And then the cool group was like this badass ring of cat ladies who were basically the Dallas Buyers Club for cats, and they were bringing in this medicine. And I look at the administrators, you know how Facebook has like, and at this point, I'm back on Facebook, obviously. You know how it has administrators and you can see who's running the group. Well, this is a worldwide group, and one of the administrators is located in Jackson Hole, where I'm from. So I'm like, and I know her. So I reach out to her, we connect, and we arrange for her to send some of the medication with my dad to me in Dell, Montana, which is halfway between me and Jackson Hole. So my dad hops in the car, drives to Dell, Montana. We have a picnic. This is my first drug deal with my dad. It went well. We do the handoff, I head home, and now it's time to give Alfalfa the medication, and he's not into it at all, and he's really uncomfortable at this point. So I would like sneak up behind him with a towel and like make a straitjacket and then force his jaw open and try and get the pills down. And it was just super traumatic for both of us. I would try and like bribe my friends into coming over to hold him down so I could force the pills down his throat. And I find myself listening to a podcast about pet massage, because that's where my life has ended up at this point. And this woman is talking about offering massage, like intentional touch, to animals in shelters, and how the adoption rates go up astronomically when you sort of offer this loving touch to the animals. And so I was like, oh, I need to make a ritual that Alfie and I can share to make this easier. So every night I would turn down the lights and I would pop open a can of tuna and I would get a little dropper of tuna water and give it to Alfie. He loved it. And then I would start, giving him some good pets and being like, hey man, you got to do this. Otherwise you'll die. So eventually he loved it. He would like get to the spot for the ritual before I would. And he would be like, time for my pills, mom. And I was like, okay, cool. So anyway, we made it through 12 weeks of that, several $1,000s later. All of my friends are very tired of hearing about this and sort of think I'm like questionable in terms of sanity. I also had to like tell my professors, oh, I need to miss class for a drug deal because my cat's dying, but it'll be fine. And we made it through. And so then I had to tell my vet, hey, surprise, Alfie didn't die. He's still alive. Can you give him a checkup? And she was like, no, he's not. That's not possible. And I was like, so here's what happened. And she said she had never seen a cat survive FIP in 21 years that she's been a vet. And the company that owns the patents for this medication also is responsible for withholding medications that helped HIV and AIDS and continue to. And also they're heavily involved in COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. So they're kind of naughty. But I'll end with a quote from Carolee Schneeman, who's obsessed with cats. And she says that a good cat is an endless inspiration and a dumb cat is just as nice. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey.
Yes.
Yeah, Cassandra. Well done. Nice work. Wow. First drug deal with your dad. I'm wondering, like, that just hit me. I realized I've never had a drug deal with my dad, so still more to look forward to in life. And yeah, kind of scary to know that drug companies out there that are managing way more than we could ever possibly understand. So I may have missed this. Is Alfalfa still with us?
Yeah, he's still alive. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. He's thriving. I've adopted another cat at this point, but that's my limit. 2 is my limit. And I've spent the last 2 months in isolation with them. So
Nice. Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. And yeah, it's crazy because people talk about crazy cat ladies, but I think everybody's just crazy pet owners. Like, I remember as a kid, my mom told me about someone who spent like a few $1,000s to save their dog, and it seemed like ridiculous. Why would you do that? And then I got a dog, and it's like, well, of course you spend every last cent you have. So awesome. Well, thanks again, Cassandra. Great to hear from you again, as always. All right, everybody, we are moving right along. Cassandra was our 5th storyteller. We will be moving into our 6th next with Mr. Mack Dukehart. Definitely a familiar face at the Cabin Fever Story Slams. Mack actually is tied for the most winningest story slammer. He won our very first story slam in 2014. The theme was Bad Idea. He has since also won Secret, Temptation, and Close Call, and has been at both of our All-Star Story Slams in 2017 and 19. So stoked to have Mack back with us. Let's see. When asked if you could meet and hang out with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Mack said, my grandpa, because I miss him. And to ask how he and the nation survived the Great Depression and hear his insights on what the hell is going on right now. I like it. All right, I would love to hear that too. Any insight right now would be very welcome. All right, everyone, give it up for Mack Dukehart.
Between the pandemic we're all living through and the theme of tonight's Story Slam, I've been thinking a lot about family. I'm sure we all are. I grew up with 2 brothers and a sister. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and growing up with siblings, sharing is required. And what I've realized, it can even turn into a bit of an art form and an act of appreciation. My mom raised us solo, single working mom, and she did it with style and grace. The soundtrack of my childhood was dominated by Dolly Parton, Waylon and Jennings, John Denver, and The Muppet Show. My little brother, Jay, my mom calls him Jaybird. He recently had a birthday, and in talking with him, I was remembering all the things we shared, and it was a surprise. I came to have a better appreciation of my own style and sense of fashion through these discussions. So growing up with siblings, you share a lot of things, and we shared bedrooms, we shared misadventures and injuries and ass whoopings, and we also shared clothes. And this is where the magic comes in. So in getting hand-me-downs from my siblings and my cousins, my mom, using her Jedi powers, she helped us to realize, like, no, you're not getting, this jank ass, worn out of style vest. Look, this is the blue and yellow vest that your cousin wore for 5 years, and it looks a lot like the one Robin Williams wore on Mork and Mindy. And yeah, it didn't take me long to realize, wow, like this stuff is gold. I am inheriting my brothers and my cousins, like, iconic wardrobes. And man, it didn't take me long to find great value in that. So as I mentioned, the apparel pipeline in my family, it came down from my cousins. Oh gosh, and I forgot to mention, don't forget your mamas this coming weekend. Okay, the apparel pipeline comes down from the cousins. Their parents were still married. They owned a successful trash hauling business. They tended to have better threads coming in through the door. So I would watch my cousins, wear these clothes for years, and then they would come down to my older brother, and eventually come to me. And by that time, yeah, I had been waiting. It was my turn. And I idolized my older brother and my cousins, and I watched them style their lives out in these outfits. And so, of course, I was psyched to receive these clothes and to share them. And so therefore, yeah, like, gosh, I remember a pair of sandals. And that wasn't, the jank ass Jesus sandals. My mom helped me realize, like, no, these are badass leather sandals with genuine truck tread soles that could never be worn out. So therefore, we all got a turn with those sandals. Yeah, you waited for this stuff. And when it came time to then pass these along, my mom was there to help me. She was there to help me realize, like, it was time. Mike, no, it's not working. It's not doing it for me. It's too tight. You take that shirt down to your little brother. You take that shirt to Jaybird. And I would, after shedding a few tears, I would cross the room to my little brother's side with that item of apparel. And I like to think it would go something like, my brother, it is your turn for this shirt. This short sleeve, light brown, terry cloth with turquoise accents on the sleeves and collar, and a deep V-neck that you could tie with a leather string. It is your turn, my brother. And he would be doing the happy dance, and he was, yeah, he'd been waiting probably 8 years for that stuff. So yeah, that's how it went down. And it was a treat in that. And I guess I've come to realize that my penchant for clothing, because of all of this, I'll always prefer the hand-me-downs that may have a little more soul, and that may come with stories, and that certainly come with these shared memories. Will always be my style. And just because I can, and it's fun, I want to show you this. My little sister always got the worst end, the youngest. I see my little brother there in a pair. Those were my favorite light blue bell bottoms. And my sister, oh my gosh, she inherited well, you can see. Yeah, what an adventure. Thank you.
Woo! Yeah, Matt.
Cool story.
Nice work. I like the 4-stripe Adidas. Were those K-Swiss? Always
straight up Adidas. See, I got white little brother got blue, all in the family.
Nice. Awesome. I gotta say, I gotta give it up for your mom for however she was able to get you and your siblings to be stoked on the apparel pipeline. Like there's so many, like I was an entitled brat. Like I didn't want to like share or get a hand-me-down. I had to have it new. It didn't always happen that way, of course, because my parents kept me in line. But I think it's amazing that you were stoked. Like everybody was like, I can't wait to get the next thing. Oh, it's coming. Mack's getting bigger, starting to be a little tight. I'm gonna get the brown shirt. Like, so awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Mack. Again, well done. Thanks for being with us from day one, literally. Okay, let's see. We are moving right along here. Our next storyteller tonight, again, another very familiar face here at the Cabin Fever Slam. We've got Mr. Jim Ross up next. Let's see, he won the Story Slams with the themes Firsts, Change, and Wild. And then, let's see, when asked, what is something you've discovered or rediscovered that you've been enjoying while sheltering in place, Jim answered, dance movies. And if you could meet and hang out with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why? This is a really good answer. Jim said, myself at age 20, so I could give me a heads up about the road ahead. Well done. I think we could all learn from that. All right, everybody, welcome Jim Ross.
Jimmy, quit telling tall tales. Second only to pick up your room and don't think you're leaving home dressed like that. My mother's admonition not to tell tall tales was probably the most frequent scolding of my childhood. But to be fair, I think Mom was probably concerned that she was perhaps raising a future politician and not, as it turned out, a future writer. But, sadly, she had to wait a few decades for her fears to be put to rest. But the day came, finally, sitting around my kitchen table with my youngest son, who was helping me go through about 2 weeks worth of accumulated mail. Mom was sitting there with her knitting needles, constructing something or other. She had ultimately more grandchildren than I can count, and those knitting needles were busy doing something all the time. But one of her grandchildren, my son, was there helping me go through this mail. And I was traveling a lot in those days. And fortunately, I found this wonderful father-son bonding thing to do, which was when I'd come home from these long trips, my son would help me go through the mail. And, he got a real kick out of it. And but it wasn't just any mail. What he really liked to do was open the rejection letters that I was getting from publishers to whom I was sending out, stories and manuscripts. And this was back in the day before electronic transfer of documents. So a wannabe writer would, put a story in an envelope, hard copy, send it off by what I guess is now called snail mail, together with a stamped self-addressed envelope, so the publisher didn't have to spend its own money on postage and stamps simply to stuff in a form rejection letter saying thanks but no thanks. And I was sending out a lot of stories and I was getting a lot of these rejection letters, and my son just got an enormous kick out of reading them out loud. And he was about 9 years old at the time, and the truth be told, he wasn't much of a reader. As a matter of fact, until the Harry Potter books came out a few years later, the only thing he would read was my rejection letters. But I was fine with that. It's not like they were in short supply. And, if that's what it took to get him to read, so be it. Although Grandma wasn't, as cool on my laissez-faire approach to parenting or much else, she didn't say anything, but those knitting needles would kind of clack a Morse code that was unmistakable in that it would, get louder as he read louder. It didn't stop him though. He would, open these things up and read out loud. Dear Mr. Ross, unfortunately, Dear Mr. Ross, we regret. Dear Mr. Ross, sadly. And laugh his little ass off. But of course, one day there came a time where he opened one of these things up and started to read, Dear Mr. Ross, we are delighted. And of course, he didn't get any farther than that because I literally leapt across the kitchen table, snatched the precious document out of his peanut butter and jelly smeared fingers. And at the same time, out of the corner of my eye, caught the look on my mother's face, which proved to me in that instant that jaw-dropping is not just a figure of speech. Well, that was more than 20 years ago. And recently, I was visiting that self-same son, who now, because the gods have a sense of humor, is also a writer. And one of the wonderful things about having an adult child who shares your professional interests is that sooner or later, as they get better at it, you become peers, colleagues, and he's quite good at this point. He's edited a couple of my books, and we talk a couple of times a week about what we're working on and this challenges, and he helps me out, I help him out. And recently, I was telling him about the problem I was having with finding the proper framework for telling the story of his opening my first publisher's acceptance. It's a cute little vignette, but it's not really a story. There's not enough there. And he said, well, no, it is a story. It's just not the one you think it is. It's like, okay, what's it about? And he said, well, first of all, it's not about you. It's about grandma. And, it's not about, you're finally breaking the code to, getting published after decades of trying. It's about what that meant to her. And, if you just, instead of running around the kitchen like, Mel Gibson with his face painted blue, you could have focused on her, you would have seen that what she really wanted to do was say, son, I'm proud of you. Come sit next to me and tell me one of your wonderful tall tales. But she couldn't do it. And that's the story. Do you know why she couldn't? And I had to confess that, no, I don't. And he said, well, Dad, you really need to figure that out. And not just to write it, 1,000-word creative nonfiction piece for an online magazine that won't even be around next year, but to finally understand the woman who raised you. And, what were her fears and desires, and how did that impact, her parenting of you and your parenting of me and my brother, which, by the way, you still have a lot to answer for. And, I looked at the smarmy little 9-year-old who's, now all grown and bearded, and I knew he was right. But the problem is, I don't know the answer, and I may never know it. But he's right, I need to figure it out. And if I do, maybe there's a story in there I can share. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim. Well done. I think what I really appreciate is in it seems as though in most of there's always this awesome underlying lesson that we get to take away from these amazing experiences you've had in your life. And I like that you're sitting here waiting to learn something from your son. Things go full circle. All right, again, thanks, Jim Ross. Always great to see you and hear from you. Story Slams wouldn't be the same without your face there. Okay, everyone. Well, there she is. Up next, we've unfortunately come to our last storyteller of the night, but I've got things to say after this. But again, thanks to everybody for tuning in out there in YouTube land. Our first ever online Cabin Fever Story Slam, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a lot of fun, and maybe we'll do it again. So next up, we have our 8th and final storyteller. We've got Anne-Marie Wells, who you may recognize. She's another, as with everyone, familiar face here at the Cabin Fever. Anne-Marie, as I said before, Mack is tied for the most Story Slam wins. Well, that is with Anne-Marie with 4 wins. Anne-Marie has won the last time, solo, power, and choices, and also got second in Wild. So a lot of medals there for Anne Marie. You may have also recognized her from I Can Ski Forever, where she played herself in the play Being in the Story Slam, but it wasn't Story Slam. And I think that's awesome because I was there with her. So thanks. So let's see. Anne Marie, when asked what made you laugh recently, she said, my sister and I laughed a lot when I asked her if I could tag along with her on her virtual Tinder date. I hope that worked out. And when asked if you could meet and hang out with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Anne Marie's response, Oprah. I don't think an explanation is necessary. It's freaking Oprah. All right, Anne Marie, welcome. Great to see you. Have fun.
Thanks, Jeff. I shared a lot of things with my dad. Our love for Fig Newtons, and our eyes, one is a little bit squintier than the other one. But one of the most important things we shared was a story. In 2004, I was a foreign exchange student. I went to go live in France and attend high school and live on top of a French restaurant with my host parents, Philippe and Micheline. I was 18 years old, and it was the first time that I was leaving home. And in 2004, there was internet, of course, but it was still mostly dial-up. There wasn't really Wi-Fi, and it wasn't unlimited. It was the type of internet where you had to pay for the amount that you used. And international calling wasn't a thing. There wasn't smartphones and WhatsApp and things like that. There wasn't Skype. So to communicate with my family, we would email and snail mail. And I had prepaid calling cards that I would use one a month to speak with my parents on the phone for about 30 minutes. And when my parents brought me to the airport, my dad, who is normally a very stoic person, hugged me and he started to cry. And he told me every night to look up at the Big Dipper, and he would too. And that story we shared for years after that. It became our thing. And I even got a tattoo of the back of the Big Dipper across my back in honor of that thing that we shared together. From this past February, my dad passed away. So we can't share Fig Newtons anymore. And I can't look into his face and see my slightly squintier eye in his face. But I'll always have the Big Dipper. I'll always have that story. For the rest of my life, it can't be stolen. I can't lose it. It can't wear with age. I can't get evicted from it. And I know that for the rest of my life, I can look up at the Big Dipper just like I did 15 years ago. And knowing that my dad was going to be looking at the same stars that I was looking at. And I can know that wherever he is now, when I'm looking up at the Big Dipper thinking about him, that he's looking at the Big Dipper and thinking about me too. And I think that's the greatest thing I've ever shared with anyone. The story is short and sweet, and that's all I have for you. So thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for sharing. So sorry to hear about your dad. Okay. But wow, really powerful that you have that you shared that with him, and just beautiful story. So thanks for sharing. Really, really appreciate it. Well, everyone, we did it. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. We did it. We figured it out. There were a lot of question marks. But again, it happened, and that was really fun. Again, I can't say enough thanks to Leah Schlachter. Give it up for Leah Schlachter one more time. Again, she produces the Story Slam for the Teton County Library, has been directing what you're seeing, and so did a lot of work to make sure that we could make this happen. And so I'm glad we did. It was super fun. Hopefully we can do it again, or I'd actually prefer if we could just all get through this shit and get back together and see one another. But if not, we've got a backup plan. I do also want to thank everybody out there for joining us tonight in our first ever online Cabin Fever Slam. Thanks to the internet gods for allowing all of this to run smoothly. It seemed pretty flawless. Thanks again to the storytellers, Ryan, Den, Jenna, Jose, Cassandra, Mac, Jim, and Anne-Marie. You guys killed it. It's so great to see all your faces again, even if it's digitally. Hope to see you again soon. And then I do want to send a special thanks. I don't know if she's watching, but a friend of mine, Molly Kittle out there, a friend of mine from growing up. Yeah, claps for Molly Kittle. She, a friend of mine from growing up, and she actually does very similar story events in San Francisco, and taught Leah and I a lot about what was going to go into doing this online. So much appreciated, Molly, for your insight and your time. And then otherwise, everyone stay safe out there, wear your masks. Just because you're not at the grocery store, if you're on Josie's Ridge, like, wear a mask. If you're running up Josie's Ridge, I don't know why you do that. Anyways, you're huffing and puffing, you're putting that shit out there. Wear a mask, wash your hands. We love you. Let's get through this. Take care of one another. You can't see someone smile under that mask, so make sure you wave. And then otherwise, my name's Jeff Moran. It's been an honor, as always, to be with you. And the next Story Slam is, we don't know, but we will let you know when that gets sorted out. All right, everyone, have a great night. We love you. See you on the other side.